The balcony wasn't meant to become important. It was small, narrow, barely enough space for two chairs and a plant that struggled more than it thrived. When she moved into the apartment, she almost ignored it, thinking of it as an afterthought rather than part of the home. Still, on warm evenings, she found herself stepping outside with a cup of tea, leaning on the railing, watching the city slow down below. He lived in the building across the street, a few floors higher. At first, they noticed each other only as shapes in the evening light. Someone opening a window, someone watering plants, someone standing quietly, lost in thought. No waves, no gestures, just shared presence in parallel spaces. The city between them hummed softly, traffic thinning, lights turning warmer as night approached. One evening, her music drifted out onto the balcony without her realizing how loud it was. A few minutes later, applause echoed lightly from across the street. She laughed out loud, startled, then lifted her cup in a small, playful salute. He returned it with a smile she could see even from that distance. It was a small moment, almost nothing, but it stayed with her longer than expected. After that, they began acknowledging each other more intentionally. Short waves, raised eyebrows at sudden rain, shared reactions to fireworks or sirens or late-night laughter from somewhere nearby. They never shouted across the street. They let distance keep things gentle. There was comfort in not having to explain anything, in knowing someone existed in your routine without demanding access to it. Eventually, timing aligned. They met downstairs one evening, both heading out, both surprised but not awkward. Conversation flowed easily, like it had already started weeks ago without words. They talked about the buildings, the views, how balconies feel like private islands floating above public lives. They walked together for a while, then parted without urgency, agreeing casually to talk again. They didn't rush what followed. Some evenings were spent together, others still alone on their separate balconies, exchanging glances across the street. The connection didn't erase solitude. It softened it. They learned that closeness didn't require constant proximity, that affection could grow in pauses as much as in presence. The balcony never changed physically. It stayed narrow, imperfect, quiet. But it became something else entirely, a reminder that connection doesn't always arrive loudly or dramatically. Sometimes, it builds slowly, between two evenings, across a shared view, waiting patiently for people who know how to notice what's already there. As summer deepened, their routines shifted almost without notice. Some nights they talked longer downstairs, walking until the streets emptied and the city lights felt softer. Other nights, they stayed on their balconies, exchanging a few quiet looks before returning inside. Neither option felt like absence. It felt like choice. They learned how to be close without collapsing into each other's space, how to let silence exist without filling it out of habit. One evening, a storm rolled in fast. Wind pushed rain sideways, thunder echoing between buildings. She stepped onto the balcony out of instinct, watching the sky change. Across the street, he was already there, hair damp, leaning against the railing. Lightning lit the space between them for a split second, and they both laughed at how dramatic it felt. He called out then, finally breaking the rule of distance, asking if she wanted company instead of weather. She nodded, heart steady, and a few minutes later there was a knock at her door. Inside, the apartment felt warmer, smaller, more real. They talked while the storm passed, sitting on opposite ends of the couch at first, then closer as the rain softened. Conversation drifted toward things they hadn't said yet, why they valued quiet, what they guarded carefully, how independence could coexist with intimacy. When he reached for her hand, it wasn't sudden. It felt like the next logical step in a story that had already been unfolding in glances and timing. After that night, the balcony became shared territory. Sometimes they sat there together, legs tangled, watching the city wind down. Other times they stood apart, one inside, one outside, comfortable with the in-between. The connection didn't demand constant togetherness. It invited presence when it mattered. As seasons changed, jackets replaced light shirts, and the plant on her balcony finally began to thrive. They joked that it needed patience more than water. That felt right. What they were building grew the same way, slowly, deliberately, rooted in attention rather than urgency. The balcony remained narrow and ordinary, but it held something rare, proof that closeness can begin at a distance, that timing matters more than speed, and that sometimes the most meaningful connections grow quietly, between two evenings, when no one is trying too hard to make them happen.